Good morning everybody and welcome to Decoding Digital, The Analytics Edge. I'm Leon Calverley, I'm the founder of Door 4 and I'm delighted to be your host this morning. We're a 23-year-old agency here at Door 4. We're a performance marketing business. We work with lead gen and e-commerce businesses across the UK and across Europe. And we bring Decoding Digital to you as a series of in-person events and webinars, really designed to share our knowledge, our expertise, our insights and our ability to really make good things happen for our clients. Today's not really a pitch. We're here today to talk about analytics and what this means for e-commerce and lead generation brands. It's a rapidly changing, fast-moving topic, and we know it's something that after many other events on other topics, this is really what a lot of you want to hear about, what a lot of you want to learn about and want to really get to grips with. So a quick view on the format today. We'll be here for 45, maybe 50 minutes. We'll be on Zoom. We're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. I think that's a whole list of channels that we're broadcasting on today. Tom will be talking. I'll introduce Tom in a minute, but we really invite you to join in with questions and answers. If those of you that are in Zoom, there's a Q&A feature. Those of you that are on social networks, drop the questions into the comments and we'll bring them in at the end, probably in about 40-45 minutes. So yeah, that's the format for today. I'm going to introduce Tom. Tom Morton is the Door 4 Head of Acquisition. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning, Leon.
Great to have you here. Where are you joining from this morning, Tom?
Right next to you, funnily enough, in Burnley.
Tom's over there.
Yeah.
It's great to have you with us. Tom is the Head of Acquisition here at Door 4. He leads our paid and organic search teams, looking after clients large and small, really driving cost-effective traffic. So analytics is an absolute central, pivotal part of Tom's business, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Do you want me to take it away?
I'm going to hand straight over to Tom. They've come here to listen to you, not to me, so off you go, Tom.
We'll see about that. Okay, so to kick it off, what we're going to cover today. So we're going to start off with attribution modelling and all of the pitfalls of that, sunsetting of cookies, or the cookie apocalypse, as you may be aware of it, and GA4, and we'll go quite in depth with GA4. As Leon said, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. I can't actually see them at the moment, but we can revisit them later. So going to the first slide, which is data confidence and attribution, in short, garbage in and garbage out. So this poll's quite a little bit old now, but I think it still resonates, which looks at what areas of marketing does your organisation need to further develop. And by far, data analysis capabilities was topping the list. So that's hopefully what we're going to give you a taste of today. I think the second one's actually performance marketing, which is something we do at Door 4 as well. So it feels like we're doing something right, at least at Door 4. And to go into another survey, nearly half of marketers are not confident in the data, which feels about right from when I speak to marketers on a daily basis, which, to be honest with you, is a terrifying statistic. If only half of you are confident in the data, what you're making multi-million-pound decisions on every year. And even only 11% of people are very confident in the data. So hopefully today we can turn that 11% to a much bigger number. So in short, garbage in, garbage out. I actually had another working title for this, but this broadcast is pre-watershed. But basically, if your data's wrong, your marketing spend's probably quite wrong as well. In short, it can get really, really expensive, especially when you factor in how much money from companies go into marketing if it's based on incorrect data. And I think there's quite a few reasons for this. I think one of the first ones, and probably the most common one, is attribution. Depending on your attribution window, you can get different results at the end of it. It's just the nature of how it is, and I'll dive into that a little bit more detail later. The next is cookies. The world is moving to a cookieless platform, but basically, if you've got an overbearing cookies policy, you could be feeding dud data, so your data could be wrong at the moment. And finally, I'd say at least 75% of all analytics profiles I've seen in my career, at least, have been configured wrong in some way or another. And that's why at Door 4, every client that comes on board, they get their profiles configured from day one. It's just simply not worth the risk when they're making marketing decisions based on duff data. Let's start off with a quote. It's half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is, I don't know which half. Now, when John was knocking around, he didn't have Google Analytics to play around with, and I think it still stands up to the test of time today. But I think if he did have Google Analytics, he'd probably still have the same problem. So now we'll just go into attribution. How do I know what gives me the most profitable return? Some of you might be able to answer that quite quickly. You might say Google Ads, you might say organic, or maybe even social. But depending on your attribution model, you might actually be wrong. So we can see here, we've got 100 sales. Facebook is claiming 40 of them, Google Ads is claiming 70, and MailChimp's claiming 8. Can you spot the problem yet? Basically, this doesn't quite add up. So I love a football analogy, so I'm not going to attempt to explain the offside rule, don't worry, but I'll just give you a little analogy. So basically, everything has a channel to play. They might work together, but it might not be quite clear how they do work together. But depending on the attribution model, it can be really hard to find out who your best player actually is. For example, in some attribution models, the channel that gets the last click before the conversion is only given the credit. So everything beforehand, all the hard work that Facebook, Google, maybe TikTok have been doing, they will not get credit for all the heavy lifting that the channels have been doing. So I'm just going to walk you through a few examples now. So in last click, Facebook gets all the credit, even if it started off as a Google Ads click. Linear, it gives a little bit more fair equal weighting, so you can see it levels out the touch points, so everyone gets a fair share of it. And time decay is the touch points closest to the time to the sale or conversion. So you can see if Google Ads at the start, it would get the least amount of credit because Facebook was the one that actually got the most credit, but it still gives equal attribution towards the lot. And the question is, which one of them is right? I mean, technically none of them are really right. However, you can use them to inform your choices. And as long as you're aware of that, that is the most important thing to do. So based on last click analysis, I'll just wait on this slide a little bit longer, but based on last click analysis, you can see just over 1,400 conversions. However, 14% of them actually had assisted touch points, which you wouldn't see if you just looked at it as a direct last click window. Now you can see here in the user journey, it's not always quite clear cut. So you can see actually in paid search has multiple touch points from paid search direct and paid search organic, but just in last click you wouldn't actually see how that'll work. So this is where you've really got to start digging into the data. Some channels work better together and some just don't, but if you didn't look at this, you simply just wouldn't know based on your attribution model. So you can see here you can manipulate a few things out of this data. So for example, are they researching first if they're going through paid search, then direct maybe, or are they ready to convert? Or is it actually just a direct traffic user who might just be an existing user anyway? So I'm going to move on to cookies shortly, but I think we're going to have a... Oh, no, sorry. Okay, so moving to cookies, not the delicious kind, don't worry. So in the past, generally it meant if you didn't have any cookies, you didn't have any data. Well, that's changing quite a bit now. So I've been dubbing it as the cookie apocalypse or the cookie apocalypse, whichever one you want to call it. But basically since 2017, a lot has changed, especially with legislation and companies making choices based on cookie adoption and privacy laws. To the point where cookies are actually being sunsetted now, and this is why tools such as Google Analytics or UA is being sunsetted. This is in a direct response to cookies going away. So how it previously worked with Google Analytics, it would be, hi, I'm Google, here's a cookie, please tell me what you're doing on this website. I will then take that information and interpret it out in Universal Analytics. However, now, Google doesn't actually need that cookie. Instead, they'll just use machine learning and modeling to base what's happening on the website based on events, making the cookie completely redundant now. Now, this is a real world example that we have. So on the left, you can see a UA example. Now you can see there's a number of sessions there. And on the right, you've got the GA4 data, which is a lot more sessions. Now, this was as a result of a very overbearing cookie policy. So on the right, GA4 is saying this is how many people we think is on the website. However, on the left, because it was an opt-in policy, we didn't see as many people come through. So actually the GA4 numbers are probably more relevant than the UA numbers that we have here. So this can really see how an overbearing cookie policy can affect the data that comes into your analytics profiles. So you might ask yourself, how do you know what's real? I'd highly recommend comparing revenue data, lead data, and CRM data. Does it all match? I would set up GA4 and compare it with UA. In the example that we can see back here, we can see a big difference here. That already shows something's going wrong. And if you review your cookie policy, if it's an opt-in or an opt-out, now you might even be questioning, do I even need a cookie policy? Well, you do at the moment, but again, I'm not a lawyer, so you should definitely follow your cookie policy. And just one thing I will touch on, just going back to this slide, is if it's an opt-in policy, you'll probably see more data than it's an opt-out policy. So it's worth considering which one you need to do. Do you want to be following the law as best possible, or do you want more data? But don't take that from me, I'm not a lawyer. A few attribution takeaways. No attribution is perfect. There are some that are getting better, such as data-driven, but I don't think that's worth discussing today because it's really not available to absolutely everyone at the moment. Data is aggregated and it will be in the future, so really do take it with a pinch of salt. And cookies will definitely make your life difficult, so at least set up GA4 today, or at least review your cookie policy to see it's not massively affecting your data. Now the third one is setup. Traditionally, if you're doing a setup on a GA account, it's either someone who really knows what they're doing or they've pulled a short straw in the company. And more than not, it's someone who's watched a YouTube video and has tried to do it and they've botched it up a little bit. I've seen in the past no revenue being tracked, no leads being tracked, and everything come through as direct traffic, all claiming they have sound and solid data, which obviously isn't the case. And if you think you're safe because you've used the GA4 setup assistant, well, if your UA is wrong, guess what? Your GA4 is probably going to be wrong as well. I'm pretty good at spotting wonky setups within about 5 minutes, so if you're unsure, do message me after the event. I'll be able to tell you very, very quickly over Zoom if your UA or GA4 is not configured properly. So in a nutshell, this is how GA4 works if you're not familiar. So you can install the code on your website using GTM or GA4. And then you want to configure the events in GA4. These are the things that matter to your website. So you get some out of the box ones such as clicks, scroll depth, etc. However, you want to involve stuff like purchases, lead clicks, etc., email clicks, newsletter signups, etc. And then you've got to wait till you get some data through, and then you need to start tracking that data with your CRM, make sure it's right in your e-commerce profiles, etc. Basically, if your revenue or your leads don't match up with your sales data or your leads data, it's likely it's incorrect. However, don't be alarmed if it's a little bit out. Generally, I would say 10% is a rule of thumb where it's a kind of acceptable tolerance. You're never going to get it absolutely 100% perfect. You will likely see some differences between the two. UA is probably going to show less because of cookie rejections, and in GA4 you'll see more because data is aggregated. And speaking of GA4, we'll move into that section shortly.
Yeah, thanks Tom. I mean, it becomes really obvious as we start to look through the tracking, through the technology, that the modern marketer really have the work cut out with lots to understand in terms of cookies, not just the legalities, not just the tracking, but using Tag Manager, lots of other analytics tools, and then understanding how these tools are changing over time. It'd be good, I think, if we can now start to look at GA4, because we know that this is the big impending change that people have got to come in. And I think one of the things that we see, having lived through the GDPR implementation in 2018, was there were big changes there for marketers where they really needed to think about the impact on the data, but there was almost a perception with GDPR that whilst there was a hard implementation in May, I think it was May 2018, really that was going to be something that people would be able to learn into over a period of time. I think GA4 really is something that's going to impact people on the 1st of July, isn't it?
Definitely, absolutely. And GDPR was 2016, not 2018.
Oh,
I know that because of this deck.
Well, I stand corrected. I'll hand over to you after my error, and I'll pass over back to you, Tom. Thank you.
Sure. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Leon. But we'll probably dive into that a little bit more shortly. So, as you might know, GA4 is coming. It's in 99 days. For some of you, that might fill you with glee, or some people might fill you with a bit of dread. But I'll just quickly go into what you need to know. So historic data, the data in your old properties, will continue to be available in a read-only state, but this data cannot be imported to new GA4 properties. When I wrote this slide, this was completely true. There are some workarounds, but I've not found one that works absolutely perfectly. So I'm going to leave this example out just for today, but I'm sure we can answer it in the follow-up. Bounce rate is going away. For a long time, people have relied on bounce rate to measure how successful their website actually is. But instead, Google has chosen to take a more of a positive approach and report on these figures for engagement rate. Simply put, engagement rate is a ratio metric presented as percentage of a formula based on engaged sessions by session. GA4, one of the problems that we've seen with media platform integrations is you couldn't previously import audiences you had previously set up in UA. However, migration options are now available, and I've tried these multiple times and they don't always work, but they sometimes work. So I think it's a good basis if you want to start on that. You need to update your tags as well. GA4 tags collect data in a standard format across websites and native mobile apps, so your tags will need to be updated to use the new standard. You'll no longer have year-on-year data, or at least readily available in platform in GA4, so that's something you need to consider as well. Your tracking will need to be a lot more accurate because it's events-based, and because it's events-based, the more events you have in, the more data you've got to interpret. However, the more you put in, the likelihood of something going slightly wrong increases each time. But on a big positive, you'll have more visible data points than you've ever had before, and I'll walk you through a few examples later on. On the left, you can see we've got the current UA. You might have seen that screenshot from the previous slide. And then on the right, you've got the new GA4 format where there's so much more data points available. You can even drill into the data a lot more, where on the left, you was kind of presented with, well, this is what you've got and you've got to interpret it. On GA4, you can really drill down into the details of it. So you might be asking, why is GA4 changing? And one of the big reasons is response to privacy, and what we've seen over time is it's not just about one particular thing. As I mentioned with the cookies policy, that is fading out. The internet is evolving. Privacy is more and more apparent that people want privacy. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just an evolution. And as we're adopting machine learning, algorithms that are coming through every day, if you look at DALL-E, ChatGPT, it's just the beginning of something so much bigger. And this is where analytics is going to evolve as well. And it's a really, really exciting time to start adopting this. And that's not it at all, but as I mentioned, event-based tracking is the future. Most or quite a lot of analytics profiles have been events-based for a while, so this isn't something that's brand new. However, it's more of a global offering, with Google Analytics probably being the biggest analytics platform that we have. And what you really want to do with these is track what you want and what is meaningful, and not relying on an outdated, out-of-the-box solution that you get traditionally with Google Ads. Just to go back to this example, because it's event-based tracking, we can see, as we've got the blind spots in the data, you can really see as a big example where it works here. And one of the things that excites me most about all of this is I work in PPC quite a lot, so we use audiences all the time. And if we've got likely 7-day purchases where we never had that before, this is machine learned data that we can use in Google Ads to try and get more people to buy rather than using retrospective audiences. So basically, Google's trying to predict the future a little bit for us, which can be a little bit scary, but it's worked really well so far, and I'm really excited to see what comes in the future. Predictive modeling is also a great one. We don't have a crystal ball, but Google's going to take a good guess. We can look at user life cycles. How do they interact? What's the most profitable customer? What data can we interpret to evolve the website to serve the users better? And you should really start adopting this information now, because the more you use it, the better it's going to become over time. And we're just going to go into next level insights, but I think we're...
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yep, I mean, it's great to see what we're going to have inside GA4. Many marketers are using it already. I think lots of brands and retailers have started to really embrace GA4, but I think it's fair to say that not all have really made the switch yet. And I think the move from UA to GA4 really isn't a like-for-like transition, is it? I think there are lots of features, lots of functionalities that really turn GA4 into really a separate product that builds on top of UA. I remember going from what was Urchin analytics. I remember using Urchin, which is where the UA tags comes from. Some people might recognise that. Really understanding that, UTM tags I should say, really understanding that was an evolution to a much more robust technology. But I think maybe now you can take us into really what those next level insights really are for marketers and how they can use them to their advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Leon. Now, I don't feel I can say this, but I can't predict the future. Google's trying, but I can't predict it. But when we look at the data and the tools that we have, we can at least make an educated guess of what the future might look like. So I asked AI for a photo 100 days from now, hoping it would deliver a picture of someone looking mortified at the laptop, not knowing what to tell the boss because they can't do the monthly marketing report because they've not set up GA4. Instead, it actually said the server was at capacity, so I had to skip that and use this stock image instead. But yeah, this guy forgot to set up GA4, so don't be like him because you've only got 99 days left. UA has been sunsetted within 99 days, so do consider this as a friendly reminder. Now, apparently you can do a lot in 99 days. Apparently you can walk from Land's End to John O'Groats 9 times, learn a musical instrument or the basics of another language, but I won't ask you to do that. Instead, just set up your GA profile if you've not already. But it feels like it's ages away, doesn't it? And it probably feels like we've been a little bit here before. If you can remember the Millennium Bug or the Y2K bug, they said it was going to cost over $600 billion to fix, but in reality no one really had a problem with it. Or the GDPR complaints, it was a bit of an issue at the time, but I don't think anyone got their office door kicked in 2016, not 2018 as Leon thought previously, by the ICO. However, with a very poorly configured GA4 setup, it could cost your business a lot of money in the short term and the long term if you're basing it on dud data. Now, not to bang on about it again, but it is going away in 99 days. So, I've generally found today people fall into 3 camps, and you'll probably self-identify with at least one of them today. So we have the what is GA4, which might be some of you today, is the head in the sand. I don't want to know about it, I'll deal with it when I have to, and trust me, you don't want to be that guy. I think this is where most people fall in, it is to have it and don't use it. You might have done an import, you may have the code on the site and it's some degree configured or maybe not. And you look at it maybe when you accidentally click on it when you go into Google Analytics. And then you have the absolute unicorns of the industry, the early adopters, the people who use it daily. They have all their events tracked, all their audiences set up, all the funnels. And I really like to call them GA4 wizards, or more accurately, probably liars if I'm honest. But these people do exist. I work with quite a few of them. But if you've done all that and you've got all your data set up, well done to you. Because actually that 99 days was probably a little bit of a lie to get GA4 ready. Because you don't work 7 days a week, and we've only got 67 working days till the 1st of July. And I'm willing to bet you've probably got a holiday or 2 between that, so really you're probably looking more about 55 days if we're being honest. So if that doesn't give you some degree of urgency, then I'm not sure what will. So with that being said, I'm going to show you how to have some deeper insights out of GA4, because I feel most of the people have it on, but they're not really actively using it today. Today we're going to be looking at the Think audience. Now, if you're not familiar with See, Think, Do, Care, I'll just quickly walk you through it. See is our most qualified audience. Think is people who are considering our proposition. Do are the people in market for intent. And Care is the brand advocates. Now, that might not look quite new to you, but if you can think of it as a marketing funnel of saying awareness, consideration, conversion, that's the best way to think about it. Now, traditionally, Think is probably one of the hardest ones that you can track. People who are potentially in market. So if you can think of these people who maybe you've read a blog article of what you've posted on the website, they're not ready to buy just yet, but they're considering your business proposition. So if we're better understanding the data, we can better understand this audience. So if you can think as a consumer, there are multiple touch points before conversion. It's not just click and buy. So many things happen before this conversion, particularly with this Think audience. They might be looking at reviews, price comparison, or simply just researching in research mode. Now, you may be familiar with this audience in UA. While you can import them over, I'd strongly recommend creating new ones ahead of time. Now, the reason for that is if we're using Google's predictive modeling, you want fresh data and fresh relevant data going into that audience. In this example, you can see how quickly we can easily leverage the think audience. Now, you'll notice Google will provide you actually with a few out-of-the-box solutions which are quite useful. In this example, this is everyone in the last 30 days who has not completed a purchase on the website. While out of the box, you can make a blanket retargeting list, import it to Google Ads, and you'll probably see a few sales in the back of it. The problem is data is aggregated. While the events may be correct, you'd likely want to see some exclusions in that list. So for example, we might have a higher intent remarketing list. So if a user, say, visits more than once but less than 5 times in a 30-day period without making a purchase, that might be more valuable to use in Google Ads. It's also worth adding it could be a member of staff, so we'll add the caveat where you might need to include the IP exclusions as well. I can make this template readily available if you want this after the webinar, and I can make it for both e-commerce and lead gen, so just put a message in the chat if you'd like that. Another useful one for the think audience is a lot of companies do use social media. I have conversations most days about people who have started to adopt TikTok, and they're actually getting like hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of views. Quite a number of clicks coming through to the website, but it doesn't really result to any sales or leads coming off the back of it. Now, here's a way to squeeze a few more bits of revenue out of your organic social. So what you need to remember is if they're interested enough to click on your social media platform, off the social media platform onto your website, they're very likely to or at least interested in what you have to offer. Remember the see, think, do, care model? So they're at the see, so they may have seen this and now move to the think, but we want to move them to the do, the actual buying position. Because it was unlikely they were actually in the buying position at that point because the intent just wasn't there. They were quite happy to scroll through TikTok. They weren't ready to go and buy your offering. However, to move them on to the do audience, make them purchase, to help them along with a simple bit of retargeting to keep your business as front of mind. And all you simply do is in that drop-down field, put the source there. So whatever they came from, it could be Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. It's actually any platform you could choose. You could even do it with mail if you really wanted to. Add that source in there, import that list into Google Ads, and retarget them with a display or video advert and nurture them to be converters. I found this to be highly successful particularly with people with good organic engagement. And that's just a simple framework for some of these audiences that you can use in GA4. You can make them as complex or as simple as you like. And one final suggestion I'd suggest is to use the library. In the library, you can make reports that align to your business objectives, KPIs, and channel targets to make informed decisions with your data, rather than just trying to piece together every time you log in all the metrics that don't matter. Speaking of metrics that matter, we regularly run a live event called the Metrics Matter among a few of the other ones. And we actually have this sheet which helps you align exactly what you should be tracking by channel, KPI, business objective, etc., which will be running again sometime later this year, which I'm sure if you sign up, you'll find about that much later. And remember when I started off with this slide, I'd really like to see this survey again after 2023 and GA4 has been rolled out. I think a lot more people will not be confident in the data. And apologies if that was hard to follow on a Friday morning. However, I can send over the funnel templates or answer any questions that you've got now. I'll just hand over to Leon.
Super. Thanks so much for that, Tom, and great timing as well. I think we've done well to keep that into about 30 minutes. So really appreciate that. Appreciate you putting that together. Hopefully that's a lot of very useful structured insight for those marketers here in the event today that are really looking for that understanding of GA4 and analytics in general. We'll move to a Q&A. We've got some time for a few questions this morning. So I think first of all, we've got a question from Helen Roberts who's asked, if that, I think it's the imported data is read-only, will we still be able to compare GA4 data to previous year-on-year reports?
So this is where it's a little bit tricky. So it's available in read-only state in UA. So you'll be able to look at your UA data, and your new data will be in GA4. You can import some data, such as audiences and certain funnels, into GA4, but you won't be able to make a direct comparison year on year, simply because the tracking is so different. And even if you wanted to, or you could import the data, it's not going to be comparing apples with apples. So unfortunately, it's not a great metric to go by.
So Google really haven't made it particularly easy for marketers in this respect.
No, basically.
I mean, we've talked about GA4 today, and it's almost become the watchword really for analytics. But for marketers, are there other options? Are there other packages available?
Yeah, there's loads and loads of analytic platforms out there. They are mostly all events-based now, so there's not really a great deal between them apart from really a hefty price tag. I mean, to name another one, Adobe Analytics is quite good, but they generally all do the same thing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend anything over GA4. I just feel like today's talk would apply to most people, as it's generally the most popular analytics platform.
Sure. So having seen the list of attendees that were going to be joining us for the Analytics Edge this morning, it was really obvious to me that we had such a range of people, from students, maybe graduates, all the way through marketing managers, e-commerce managers, merchandisers, and even up to marketing director and MD roles. I think the people are here to learn. So what would you say, Tom, would be maybe the minimum level of learning and training that you'd expect marketers really to get to get the most out of GA4?
Yeah, of course. I don't think anyone needs to be a data scientist overnight. That's the long and short of it. But I don't really think you need to be in the detail, in the weeds every single day. However, I recommend everyone does take the GA4 course provided by Google. So it's not really about the platform that you need to look into, it's just how you interpret data. So as long as you can interpret data and make decisions based on that, I think that would be the general level of proficiency. But I highly recommend everyone at least tries the GA4 course so you can understand how to use the platform and interpret data.
So that's everybody's weekend sorted then. Off you go. And I think just maybe one final question, I think, before we wrap up. You're talking about audience data there, and a particular topic that's close to me is see, think, do, care, really understanding intent levels, building audiences based on demographics and behaviours. It strikes me with what you said about GA4 evolving, particularly to use machine learning, so that a lot of the decision making is inside the box rather than inside the marketer's plan. If that audience data isn't configured properly, what's the impact there for brands and retailers that rely on those insights?
Yeah, it's a complex answer, but I'll try to nail it down to a very, very simple one. In the short term, if your data is wrong, you're going to make short-term wrong decisions. In the long term, we're very much at the birth of AI and machine learning, particularly in analytics products. If you're feeding AI bad data, you're going to get bad results at the back of it. And it's not just going to affect year 1, year 2, year 3. It's going to have a massive, massive knock-on effect. So when I stress it's really important to get this right and get this right early, you've really got to take a longer view of this and not just a really short one. I know me and you have talked about AI in the past and how quickly it is developing. I can't wait to see the analytics product in a year. You know, previously you thought this was space kind of territory, this would never happen, but we're doing predictive modelling in analytics. So it's really, really important that you get this right from day one.
Absolutely. So we embrace AI rather than running scared.
Absolutely.
Away from it.
Yes.
Absolutely, no problem at all. I think we've got one final question here from Kevin. It says one of the biggest challenges he's had is setting expectations at board level, really about sessions changing and therefore those important metrics such as conversion rate. So Tom, how are you managing these conversations with clients at this senior level?
It is tough. I really do feel for you there. But it is really just saying the data is now aggregated. So you cannot compare like for like exactly and that. If you can work out a percentage variance between the two, I would then take something as an average. So you've at least got a kind of comparison year on year. But in the example that I showed earlier, I think it was 38k sessions versus 73. That was down to a dodgy cookies policy, but it's still a big, big difference. I'd question maybe a setup if it is such a massive difference. If you're looking at leads coming in, I'd say that's a better benchmark versus the actual sessions anyway. But to get an idea of conversion rate, it is good to know, but I'd maybe take that as a percentage in between the middle and work out what's missing and what's not.
Superb, thanks for that. I think that's going to bring us to the end of the formal Q&A. What I would just say is that Door 4 are available to help you with your performance marketing and analytics. We're primarily a traffic and experience agency, so we work with businesses, and Tom's department really look after organic traffic, SEO, paid traffic, PPC shopping, paid social. And plus we have a very, very strong conversion rate optimization UX team that are here to help. So we did have a final question from Amanda, who's actually said, Tom, can you help us look at our Google Analytics setup? And that really brings us to what the next steps are after this webinar, really, for all of you, is that Door 4, we are offering a session called Are You GA4 Ready? We recognise that lots of businesses, lots of brands really have a little bit of a gulf to go for that configuration and implementation, just to make sure that everything's in place. So what we'll do is, on a free 30-minute complimentary call, Tom and his experts will really look into your GA4 setup, look at your implementation, look at how you're using it for managing the metrics that matter and those configurations around audiences, really to make sure that setup is going to give you long-term value. So either drop a message in the chat, or we'll send an email after the event to everybody here so that you have the opportunity to request that session. And finally, just the last thing we want to do really is thank everybody for coming. Thanks for being part of Decoding Digital, the Analytics Edge this morning. We'd really, really love to get your feedback about how you found this morning's session. Hopefully it wasn't too long. Hopefully our disagreement about dates for GDPR didn't really upset you too much. And hopefully you're able to crack on with your working day. We'll send out an email to everybody requesting feedback. And everybody that enters into that feedback into there will have a chance to win a £50 Amazon voucher. And we do give away that £50 Amazon voucher. I think you can just see the evidence of that on the screen. That's really all. The next events, we'll be running another webinar in a few weeks, and we have a live event here in Lancashire near our HQ on the 11th of May. There'll be more information going out about that later to everybody. Thanks again. A big thank you to Tom Morton for joining us this morning. Thank you, Tom, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.